We have a couple topics left with blood vessels, and then we're going to move on to the lymphatic system. This is the control of blood pressure, which is similar to the control of heart rate. It involves a lot of the same things, like the control center. So here they're showing the medulla oblongata, so that's kind of the control center, the cardiovascular center. So this is like the brain stem. So they're showing input coming in to the brain stem, and that's from those receptors, right? So here we're talking about pressure. So we're mainly talking about the baroreceptors. This is the place where you have other receptors as well, like the chemoreceptors, proprioceptors. So they're located around the aorta and the carotid bodies. So if you look at it, like this one's in the aorta, this one's around the carotid artery, and so that's the input going to the medulla oblongata. And then signals are sent back by the vagus nerve. So just like with heart rate, right? So you see two different things going out. One is to the well, they're not showing it to you, but one's going to be the blood vessels. So you can go to blood vessels directly, and you can constrict them or relax them. If you constrict the blood vessel, pressure goes up. If you relax the blood vessel, pressure goes down, or if you dilate them. You can have vasodilation, or you can have vasoconstriction. That's going to influence blood pressure. And of course, you can also, by making the heart beat faster, that's also going to influence blood pressure. So that's kind of the same idea behind control of heart rate. The only difference is here the motor neurons are affecting blood vessels, whereas when we were talking about heart rate, it was just the heart. There is a chemical difference as well. So I have it on this side, and these are going to be about the same as well. So some things that are similar. Okay, so we see renin-angiotensin, epinephrine, ADH. Those three hormones are left over from the endocrine system. Right? So renin, well, angiotensin 2 is a vasoconstrictor. Angiotensin 2 is a vasoconstrictor. Aldosterone, which falls under this first category. Aldosterone is going to tell your body to hold on to sodium. Because of that, you're going to hold on to water. Antidiuretic hormone does the same thing, right? Antidiuretic hormone is a vasoconstrictor, because it's called vasopressin, and it encourages your body to conserve water. It tells your kidneys to use the least amount of water in urine as possible. So these two, renin, angiotensin, aldosterone, that whole complex, and the ADH, they do the same thing. They both work to raise blood pressure. Epinephrine is going to increase heart rate. Norepinephrine actually increases contractility. So both of those things, increasing heart rate, increasing contractility, they're going to raise blood pressure. So the first three on here work to raise blood pressure. ANP is one of the exceptions. It is designed to lower blood pressure. So it is, the name of this is atrial for atrium. Atrial natriuretic peptide. What it does is when blood pressure is too high, that means the pressure in the vena cava is also going to be high. And that makes the pressure in the right atrium high. So this is located in the right atrium. So when the baroreceptors get triggered in the right atrium, it puts out AMP. And AMP is going to do everything the opposite of like these. Right? So antidiuretic hormone constricts blood vessels. AMP is going to dilate blood vessels. Epinephrine raises heart rate. AMP is going to lower heart rate. Encourage your body to excrete water. It's not very effective, but you know, it nevertheless is there and it works. Like it does stuff. Notice on this side I have CNX, that's your 10th cranial nerve, and then this one, CNIX, that's your 9th cranial nerve, glossopharyngeal. Most of the time, everything's going to be the 10th cranial nerve, the biggest nerve. So you have neurological control of blood pressure and you have chemical control of blood pressure. I do want you to remember what the hormones are, not just list. Like if I ask this on the quiz, don't just list hormones like I listed here. Here I just put them because I knew I was gonna like say what they do. Don't just list ADH, like what does it do? You know, what does ANP do? Hypoperfusion is shock. So when your body goes into shock, you're not oxygenating your tissues. That's hypoperfusion. You're not perfusing your tissues. You're not getting enough oxygen. Usually that means low blood pressure. I mean, I have different kinds up here, but really it comes down to low blood pressure. This is not all of them. I put 4. There are other kinds of shock, like septic shock, for example. But these 4 kind of act similar. So I kind of put them up there and I put them together. So the first type of shock is hypovolemic. Decreased blood volume. This could be because of, just think about any reason you would lose, you lose blood. Well, it could be because of hemorrhaging or something like that. But it also can be because of, like your blood volume will go down because you're dehydrated. So what will make you dehydrated? Sodium deficiency. Sodium deficiency will make you dehydrated. Water pills, laxatives, things like that. That can kind of, in extremes, that can kind of cause hypovolemia. So hypovolemic just means low volume, low blood volume. That's what's causing, low blood volume. That means you're not getting blood around your body like you should. Low blood volume equals low blood pressure. Second one is something like a heart attack, cardiogenic. MI is myocardial infarction. So an MI is a heart attack. So something like a heart attack, right? The pump's not working. So therefore you can't pump blood around the body like you did before. That will cause shock. Something's obstructing blood vessels, like a pulmonary embolism is an example. Heart attack is an example of cardiogenic. PE is an example of obstructive. Obstructive is something's blocking the blood vessel, like some kind of embolus. Then the fourth is vascular. These have all the words sometimes. The vascular one slips my mind right now. They call it neurogenic. That's like another name. Okay, so sometimes these terms have other names. But I was just calling it vascular because you're having inappropriate vasodilation. And if you look up here, I spelled, and I do this a lot, I spelled vasodilation wrong. There's no A in that word. I've known that for years. I just can't stop doing it for some reason. I just got so used to writing it the wrong way that I write it the wrong way, even though I know it's not. Because the word dia means through. So like it just, for some reason, that part from like midterm is stuck in my head. But anyway, so vasodilation. So something like anaphylactic shock, right? Some kid, little Harrison is allergic to peanuts, so all of his blood vessels will dilate. When you get, like, let's say you get stung by a bee, right? And so, say you get stung in your hand. A natural reaction of your body is to dilate the blood vessels close to your hand, or leading up to your hand. That's a normal reaction. And that's good because you want to have a little bit of swelling, a little bit of inflammation, and you want to get things quickly to that site. So if my hand got stung, I want to dilate my blood vessels because I want white blood cells to get there. I want to clean up the toxins from the bee. So that's a normal reaction. But sometimes, some people, their bodies overreact to it, and all of their blood vessels dilate, and then their blood pressure plummets. Now, the little side thing, what also happens is it's bronchoconstriction when people have an anaphylactic shock. Because what you're stimulating the parasympathetic system. So the blood vessels get dilated and the bronchioles get constricted. Epinephrine is what those people, they have an EpiPen with them. That's going to constrict blood vessels. So that's going to go against this inappropriate vasodilation. You're going to constrict your blood vessels and you're going to dilate your bronchioles. So epinephrine is also a bronchodilator. It's a bronchodilator and a vasoconstrictor. Because that's what that's what the sympathetic response is, fight or flight. Any fight or flight, you want to constrict your blood vessels, but you also want more oxygen getting into your body, so you're going to dilate. Okay. So what can you do? Compensation, our body's compensation for hypoperfusion. All the things that raise blood pressure. So you think about what raises blood pressure.
the renin-angiotensin-aldosterone thing, that raises blood pressure. Aldosterone 2, angiotensin 2. Angiotensin 2 is a vasoconstrictor, so that's going to constrict your blood vessels. Your sympathetic division of the ANS, the ANS, we were talking about it, like the vagus nerve, the medulla oblongata goes through the vagus nerve, and that's hooked up to your heart, and that's hooked up to your blood vessels. That's the ANS, autonomic nervous system. Right, so your body can constrict blood vessels just directly. Your nervous system can constrict your blood vessels. You've got nerves innervating your blood vessels, and it's controlled by the medulla oblongata, the cardiovascular system. So that'll happen right away, and then you'll also produce ADH, produce renin, angiotensin 2, aldosterone. Those all work to keep blood pressure up. Your heart rate will also go up because you're trying to compensate. That's why in hospital setting or medical setting they'll give you epinephrine. Kids have really good shock. They have really good compensatory mechanisms. So kids actually act kind of different. When adults are going into shock, you see it happening. It's kind of like a linear line going down. Like their blood pressure gets worse and worse every few minutes. Because they're compensating, but their compensatory mechanisms, they don't work. They gradually start to not work as well. Kids, they stay normal for a while, and then all of a sudden everything falls apart. They'll just collapse. So that's why, kids that hurt their head, they bang their head or whatever happens to them, you gotta watch their behavior and watch their pupils, things like that, because they have really good compensatory mechanisms, and you might not see it, but then at the last second they just crash. But anyway, these are ways your body can compensate. And I would even add to that, you can add to that epinephrine. That's another compensatory mechanism up to a point. ANP, don't put that. That does the opposite. Some people go back to this slide and they just throw this down. I hate that because it's just you memorizing letters. You don't even know what ANP is. So you put it here. ANP lowers blood pressure. ANP lowers blood pressure. It's exactly what you do not want. You want to activate this. This is the ANS, autonomic nervous system, right? Remember, the autonomic nervous system is like your involuntary nervous system. It controls things like digestion, it's your fight or flight response, that's the parasympathetic. It's your rest and digest response, that's the parasympathetic. It's all the stuff that is involuntary. It controls your smooth muscle. So, all right, that's it. I think that's it for that's it for this. That's it for blood vessels. Does anybody have any questions on blood vessels? I think I'm gonna
rather than make that a separate lecture, because I have it as a separate lecture already, I'm gonna keep going. Let me close this out. I got my next one ready to go. Oh, you might, well, we'll go with that at the end of class, like what things I really think are important for us. So that was, those 3 chapters were the cardiovascular system. Blood, heart, and blood vessels. This is the lymphatic system. So, this book put lymphatic system together with immunity. I kind of teased it apart, so I'll talk about the lymphatic system today. I might get into immunity today too, I don't know. But I kind of treat them as separate chapters. But I can see how they are related, so I get it. This is your lymphatic system, and it kind of runs along your, I view it as like the service road to the interstate. It's another way to move things around the body. This is how your body will move lipids around. So lipids can go into lymph. You want to just go now? All right. So, yeah, go ahead down over here. So yeah, lipids are transported by lymph. Is the talking going to mess you up, or do you want to? You like wait till I'm done with the lecture, or you can just go now. Whatever you're. So here's the functions of the lymphatic system. Right, drain excess interstitial fluid. So we talked about in the last chapter how you have filtration and reabsorption. So filtration is fluid leaving the capillary. Reabsorption is fluid going back into the capillary. The problem is you have more filtration than reabsorption. So as I say up here, up to 3 liters of water end up in your interstitial fluid.
Yeah. It's kind of hard.
Yeah. You might just wait till I'm done. I'll be done in like 30 minutes.
Yeah.
Or less. So you would have like edema or swelling. So the interstitial fluid, it drains the excess interstitial fluid. Let me go to another slide for a second. So this is like your capillary beds. Right, so you see all the blood vessels, all the capillaries here. Here's all the cells. And in between, the white spaces in between the cells, that's your interstitial fluid. Then what you see here is so you've got fluid moving into here, you got fluid moving back. Right, and so you end up with more fluid in this interstitial area. So here's the lacteal, here's the beginning. This is the beginning of the lymphatic system. So it's taking in the extra fluid. And if you were to follow this is the beginning of the lymphatic system. If you follow it, it has an ending. It's going to end right at your subclavian vein. But anyway, so this is pulling in extra interstitial fluid. So that's one of the functions. The other function is to transport lipids. Lipids and lipid-soluble vitamins. Remember, those 4 vitamins are lipid-soluble.
So transport. And then third, it is involved in immunity. So there are some immune responses that come out. Those are the three functions. And again, this is the lymphatic system has a starting point and an ending point. The starting point is like the lacteal. The ending point will be the subclavian. So let me show you. So here we are. So you see the smaller vessels? The smaller vessels, well, this is actually showing you the end. Well, this is at the other end. So you start off with the lacteal. From the lacteal, they go into what are called lymphatic vessels. So lymphatic vessels are a little bit bigger. So this is heading only in one direction. This is going from your cells toward your subclavian veins. That's it, it moves in one direction only. So lymph itself does not really circulate. So it's starting here, it's going to go into lymphatic vessels. It's going to go through lymph nodes. Like here's some lymph nodes here. And it's going to go into lymphatic trunks. There's 5 different lymphatic trunks, and they're named after the blood vessels. So the ones coming down from the neck, those are jugular trunks, because they're next to the jugular vein. Then you have ones coming around the shoulder. You just see a little bit of it, but you can see it better down here. You see this arrow here, and that arrow there. Those are your subclavian trunks, named after the subclavian vein. Then there's one down here. You see these arrows down here? This is about where your heart and lungs are at. Right, so we call that, where these arrows are coming down here, it's written right here, bronchomediastinal. It's written right here too, bronchomediastinal. Broncho means lungs, obviously. I never told you guys the word mediastinum. Mediastinum is the cavity. It's the area, it's like the hole where the heart sits. So mediastinal, you think heart. So they combine these two words, bronchomediastinal. Right, so we've got 3 so far. Subclavian, jugular, bronchomediastinal. Then you've got 2 down here. Lumbar and intestinal. Intestinal is going to drain all the areas around your intestines, you know, your abdomen. And the lumbar, you're thinking of like the lowest part of your vertebrae. Lumbar is going to drain like the pelvis and the legs. And then if you follow these trunks, they're going to lead into one of 2 ducts. I'm going to show you the shorter one first. This is the right lymphatic duct. Just that little bit right here. Just kind of tracing it with my cursor. Here it is over here too. This is the right duct. That's the right bronchomediastinal trunk. And then right about here, this is the duct. Now the duct is starting. And that empties right into the right subclavian. The left one's longer. The left one starts all the way down here. There's like this bulge here called the cisterna chyli. And then if we follow it up, I'm kind of following it up right now with my cursor, it's going to end up in the left subclavian. So we have 2, we really have 1.5. I mean, you know, it's we have the left lymphatic duct, or we call it the thoracic duct. We have the left lymphatic duct, which is a little kind of long. And then the right lymphatic duct is just this piece right here. So that's your two ducts. And that's the end. So right where it drops into the subclavian, that's the end. So the fluid that started in your interstitial fluid is getting put back into the bloodstream. So it started here. Here it is. It's going to get absorbed into the lymphatic, into the lacteal. Call this thing a lacteal. Gets absorbed into the lacteal, and then it's going to go all the way through, and it's going to end up in the subclavian. So that's kind of the idea of how it starts at one place and it ends at another place. It starts at the lacteal, it ends at the it ends right here at the duct, right and left lymphatic duct. I don't know, these might help, but they never help me. This is just showing you like a type of circulation. It's saying that, here's a fluid, leaves your heart, goes down the aorta, into the arteries, veins, capillaries. Right here's the capillary bed. The water's leaving here. Fluid's leaving this and not coming back in the same amount. So the lacteals are going to pick it up and carry it through lymphatic capillaries. It's going to pass through the lymph nodes. A lymph node is like a filter. It's going to pass through the lymph nodes. It's going to go into a lymphatic vessel, lymphatic trunk, and then finally a lymphatic duct, and it goes right back into the subclavian. I don't know if that slide's helping you. Probably not. So let me just pass it. Let's talk about some of the lymphatic organs and some of the lymphatic tissues. So we've got primary and secondary organs. So it's not just about the lymphatic vessels. There are organs that are lymphatic organs. So primary. Primary organs are where we're going to make the cells of our immune system. And there's pretty much two types of cells. B cells and T cells. We'll be talking about that maybe later today, but by next class for sure. B cells and T cells, those are two of the main cells that are involved in our immunity. They are made in the red bone marrow and the thymus. That's like their boot camp. So the word B cell comes from the word bone marrow. B for bone marrow, T cell, T for thymus. So the thymus is a gland that sits on top of your heart. And the bone marrow is where all your blood cells are made, right? Your red blood cells are made in your bone marrow. So are your white blood cells. But some of these white blood cells, some of these lymphocytes are going to stay in the red bone marrow. That's where their boot camp, their basic training is. Those are the B cells. They stay in the bone marrow and they do their basic training there. Some lymphocytes go to the thymus. They migrate and they travel to the thymus. That's where their basic training is at. That's where they learn to be soldiers. So those are the T cells. So when you become a B cell or when you become a T cell, we call that becoming immunocompetent. You're competent to, to participate in the immune system. But there are also secondary organs, and that's where, like, we trip the alarm system. That's like where you know that your body's been invaded by something. And so I put here lymph nodes and lymph nodules, and they're very similar. You have lymphatic nodes and lymphatic nodules, and then your spleen. So lymph is constantly being cycled through your lymph nodes, through your spleen. You could look at them as like a filter, right? They're filtering out the lymph, and they're looking like if there's any bacteria or viruses in that lymph. This will set the alarm off. Your lymph nodes will set the alarm off, or your spleen. So that's going to trigger the immune response. So not only is the lymphatic system like your lacteals and lymphatic capillaries and lymphatic ducts, it's not only that tube, those vessels. It's also your spleen, your thymus, your red bone marrow. It's all considered part of the lymphatic system. And I can show you, we'll get to that later. This is like the thymus. So here's your, this is the pericardium, and the heart's sitting underneath that, right? You can't see the heart like a normal heart, right? Because the pericardium is surrounding it, that sac. You cut away that sac, then you'll see the heart. This cavity here is called the mediastinum. So anyway, here's your thymus sitting on top of it. If you look inside, it looks like this. This is nothing I'm going to test you on, but just so you get a look. Kind of looks like, again, the adrenal gland. You have a capsule, cortex, and a medulla. So the medulla is like lighter colored. And the reason that it's colored like this is because of all the lymphocytes. So this is like purple-ish color because, well, look down here. Like each of these dots is the nucleus of a lymphocyte. But you can't see the actual cell. You just see, like, this is the cell here. Here's an epithelial cell, but that's not really showing you anything. But all these dark, that's the nucleus of a lymphocyte. So here you see that the lymphocytes are really crowded in together. That's why it's like darker. But then the middle part, it's a little bit more reddish color. That's because there's fewer lymphocytes. Not so important. I'm just showing you what it looks like. I'm not gonna like quiz you on that. You'll see the spleen looks similar in that it's got those color gradations, right? See how it's all like dark. So like all here's where blood comes through. It's coming through here, and then this thing is like, these are all lymphocytes right here. So if there's any pathogen in here, it's going to get the lymphocytes are going to catch it. These are like T cells and B cells, right? And then you see this red area out here. That's blank. I have them written down. All right, so before we even start, let's talk about some terms that I'm going to be talking about when I talk about immunity. So T cells and B cells, right? They're both lymphocytes. So if you remember, there were 5 types of white blood cells. Like basophils and neutrophils and all that stuff. One of them was lymphocytes. The lymphocytes are kind of special white blood cells. They're the ones that are going to go to like basic training and learn how to be fighters. The B cells, they're going to stay in the red bone marrow. The T cells are going to go to the thymus. So we're going to be talking about those cells a lot. Actually, there's 2 types of T cells that we're going to talk about, T4 and T8, but we'll get to that. A microbe is anything that is small. So microbe can be a bacteria, it could be a virus, it could be a little tiny paramecium swimming around. A microbe just means some small little thing that we need to use a microscope to see. A pathogen is anything that's going to cause a disease. So like a nematode worm, that infects people sometimes, you can see that, right? So that's a pathogen, but it's not a microbe. But usually, we use these terms kind of interchangeably. So when we're talking about microbes, we might use the word microbe to mean pathogen, but really, a pathogen is a pathogen is something that's going to harm you. You have lots of microbes in your body, right? We have tons of bacteria, for example. If you look at your digestive system, you have 400 species of bacteria. So you have microbes all over your body. You have more microbes in your body than you have cells. But the microbes are not all pathogens. The bacteria that's in your gut, they're not pathogenic. They're not making you sick. In fact, you need them, right? So they're microbes, but they're not pathogens. There's 5 types of pathogens that make us sick. Well, I shouldn't say that. I wrote down 5. I wrote down 5 different types of pathogens that make us sick. The first 2, that's going to cover 95% of illness. If somebody's ill, it's probably a virus or bacteria. But it's not that fungus, it's not that we will get, we do get fungal infections, right? That happens. Something like athlete's foot or ringworm or something you see in a hospital setting would be like thrush. So yeah, that's an infection, right? But most of the time, the vast majority of the time, the question is it a virus or is it a bacteria? If you have pneumonia, you're not looking at other things. Is it viral pneumonia or is it bacterial? There is protozoa. Protozoa doesn't really affect us in the US so much, but a good example of protozoa is malaria. Malaria is a protozoa. It's not a virus, it's not a bacteria, it's a different kind of organism. Then you have parasites. And we do have things like worms and flukes and stuff, not a lot in the United States, but you occasionally get them, especially if it's somebody traveling from another country, then that's something you might want to think about. So we have, in Louisiana, we have hookworm, and then we have this disease called pinworms, like enterobius. Usually kids get the pinworms, but you can get hookworms. It's not really, you don't see it so much anymore because we're not outside. But you still run across it. But anyway, the main ones that we'll be talking about, when I go through the lecture on the immune system, I'm going to be always talking about viruses or bacteria. Right? Viruses and bacteria viruses are different than all these other 4. And we'll get to that, but viruses attack cells from the inside. All these other 4 attack cells from the outside. So viruses are like a Trojan horse. If they get inside first and you don't know they're there, then they start doing their damage. But anyway, these are significant pathogens. We talk about antigens a lot. An antigen is just a protein that's on the pathogen. Your body doesn't recognize a complete pathogen. It doesn't have to. It only recognizes certain proteins that are on the pathogen. So you don't have to know what a whole bacteria looks like. It's like when you fight a war against another country, you recognize the flag on the sleeve of the uniform. You don't have to recognize oh, that's Dave. You gotta recognize oh, that's Steve. You don't have to do all that. Just look at the flag on the uniform. That's like an antigen, right? And so when they train you, they're like, okay, these are the soldiers. It looks like that flag. That's their uniform with the flag. Everything with that flag, just kill it. Just kill the flag. That's the antigen. The Johnson & Johnson vaccine, that's what it is. Took antigens from the virus, and they're injecting that antigen into you. And then your body is gonna start going through the response as if it were infected. So you are infected. But you're not infected with the virus. You got infected with like the uniform that the virus wears. The other two don't work on this. That's a whole new system. But traditional vaccines, that's one of the ways that it works. So the antigen is the thing that's going to provoke the immune response. So the words antigen and pathogen might be used interchangeably. But there are differences between them. Anyone have any questions? All right. Go back to the thymus. Here's some facts about the thymus. Am I going to ask you on the, probably not. I'm probably not going to ask this to you on the test. But just so you know at least, that this is where T cells mature. So you have T cells. You're going to see this thing called dendritic cells a lot. Just ignore it for now. Another APC stands for antigen presenting cell. I'm going to talk about that later. But the name kind of already tells you what it does. It's a cell that presents the antigen. So if antigens are like the flag that's on a uniform, you have to have a cell that's going to take that flag and show it to the T cells. Hey, T cells, here's your flag. Anyone wearing this flag, you kill it. But that's going to come later. Macrophage. P-H-A-G-E means to eat. Or P-H-A-G means to eat something. Like, for example, the word esophagus or phagocyte. Got that word P-H-A-G in it.
We found it. I've been all over this entire campus trying to find you.
Really?
This is your student, Stephanie.
This is Stephanie.
Hi.
Hello, I'm gonna leave you now, let Sandra know that he's been found. You can disregard all those messages on your cell phone now.
Okay.
Thank
Sorry
you.
about that.
Steph.
You know about the bookstore now?
Yes.
So, macrophages are like phagocytes. Pretty much same thing, right? So I'll be using the word macrophage or phagocytes, but anyway, you have these phagocytes there. Phagocytes are kind of general, they just eat stuff. They eat stuff that get into you. They're not specific. You know, T cell or B cell, it's trying to fight coronavirus. Like, that's all it does. That's all it knows how to do. It doesn't know how to fight the common flu. It doesn't know how to fight allergy infections. It only knows how to fight coronavirus. Macrophages know how to fight everything, but they're not equipped to fight a lot of things. Like, maybe they could go after a few coronaviruses, but that's not enough to solve your problem, right? So macrophages will never take care of you with a big infection like that, right? But if you breathe in some grains of pollen, or if you get bacteria that's on the food or something, just like a little bit, macrophages take care of that. You don't need to trigger your whole immune system for that. Or if you swallow like a worm egg, things like that happen every day, all day, right? Macrophages, they go in there and they eat it. So if you have like a few things that infect you, macrophages or phagocytes, they take care of it, they handle it. It's like the cops compared to the military. Cops are good at handling things that happen like in the city, but they can't fight like an invasion, right? If you want an invasion, you gotta get the army, go to your T cells and B cells. But anyway, these are things that you find in the thymus. This is a lymph node. So as the lymph is going from like the smallest capillary all the way to like the biggest trunk and duct, it's going to go through these lymph nodes. So you see it's like going in here and then it's going to go out here. So this is kind of like a filter. So you see this word afferent and efferent. Efferent always is going to be exit, or I think like this, A comes before E.
So A is where they enter, E is the exit. Because you're gonna see this again, like when you talk about like the kidney, for example. But anyway, you see the valves, right? The valves are the same way that other valves work, keep everything moving in one direction. So the lymph comes in, it moves through here, it goes through all this area, and in this area, you find lots of things. T cells, B cells, macrophages. So if there's a piece of bacteria in the lymph, as the lymph's moving through here, it will not get out the other end without sounding the alarm system. And it kind of looks the same. Capsule, cortex, medulla. I'm not going to really ask you about lymph nodes. You got about 600 lymph nodes in your body. They tend to be clustered in different areas. So you've got them in your neck, armpit, groin area. You've got some in your abdomen. I think this first slide, very first slide, kind of showed us some. Like you see some of the, right? So these are the axillary area, like armpits, axillary nodes. You have them up in your neck. So group of them here, group of them down in the inguinal area. So those are your lymph nodes, right? You notice a doctor feeling around for them because if they swell, that might be a sign that the immune system's been triggered. You have like a bacteria or a virus in your body, the filters picked it up. They could feel under your armpits and stuff, but it's, much easier to feel up there. Oh, let me show you something before I move on. This area right here. See that house? It's green. This area is green, and this area is like peach colored. So it's showing you here. The right lymphatic duct drains the right arm, the right neck, and the head. The left lymphatic duct drains everything else. That's all of it. I forgot to tell you guys that. All right, let me go back. So anyway, those are your lymph nodes. There are things called lymphatic nodules, and they are similar to lymph nodes, except that they don't have a capsule around them. But you see these cells here that we're going to be talking about when we get into immunity. You see the T cells and the B cells, and you see macrophages, and then you see a fourth kind of cell called a dendritic cell. 4 types of cells here. This is your spleen. One thing your spleen does is that it phagocytizes old, worn out blood cells. So that there's lots of phagocytes in there, macrophages. The other thing that it does is that it's a lymphatic organ. It's gonna sound the immune system. It's gonna trigger your immune system. And again, this is something more like a lab type of thing. So I'm not gonna really get into it. It's all the way over on your left side, kind of where I'm putting my hand, but you guys can't see it. It's all the way over on the left side. So lymphatic nodules, like a lymph node, but no capsule. They're found in the lamina propria of the GI. All right, so what does this mean? This lamina propria is one of the areas, so when you look at any of the tubes in your body, so like respiratory, you have tubes, right? It's a tract. You've got like your trachea and stuff, it's like a tube. Digestive system, GI means gastrointestinal. So any of the tubes, think of your esophagus, stomach, intestine, trachea, ureter, all your P tubes, reproductive tubes, all of that stuff. Those, if you look at the lining of it, the lining of it, the answer to that is always the same, epithelial tissue. What lines any of this stuff? Epithelial tissue. What lines your blood vessels? Epithelial tissue. But what about the next layer? The next layer, you usually have like a little layer of elastic or something. So under this layer is usually what we call lamina propria. So you have these nodules hanging out right under the surface of all the tubes in your body, all the vessels in your body. So right underneath your blood vessel, you've got them. If you go to your stomach and you bust through the epithelial tissue, underneath it, you're going to find lymphatic nodules. So mostly it's going to be referred to as MALT, mucosa-associated lymphatic tissue, because mucosa is like this first layer, like the stomach, the lining of your stomach, it's epithelial tissue, but we also call it the mucosa of the stomach. So mucosa means the first layer. The mucosa of your, like if you take your finger and put it like in your cheek, like your thumb, and you like rub your cheek, you're rubbing the mucosa tissue, the mucosa layer. I mean, it's also epithelial tissue. Or when they swab you for corona, they're swabbing the mucosa layer. They're also swabbing your epithelial cells. Like same thing. All right, so mucosa-associated lymphatic tissue, that's all it means. But that layer, when you see the word mucosa, you're thinking of that first layer. All right. So that, now we're kind of moving into immunity, like actual immunity, your immune system. There's two types of immunity. I'm going to talk about general today, and I'm going to stop at general, because that's enough. And then specific, I'll leave that until Wednesday. This is a little more difficult. I don't want to put it on a quiz. In fact, I don't even know how much of this I want to put on a quiz. It's a lot of information for a quiz. So, general versus specific. I actually already described it. I was talking about getting coronavirus, right? That's like a big deal that you need an immune system that's tailored to just go after that one virus. That's specific immunity. Specific immunity goes after one specific pathogen. It doesn't go after anything else. So your body has to create an army that is specialized in killing coronavirus. It can't kill anything else. If you get bacterial pneumonia, that's a whole different issue. You have to make another army. And while you're making that army, that's what's making you feel like sick all the time, like achy joints and stuff like that. That's your immune system getting triggered. It's not necessarily, you get a vaccine and your immune system, you feel like you have a flu. That's because the immune system is what's making you feel sick. It's not, you didn't actually get the virus. I don't know why people think that. So there's different types. General is when you put on your mask. There's stuff on it. There's dust mites on it, and there's pollen on it, and there's bacteria on it for sure. Like right now, I'm touching the corner of it. There's bacteria on my finger because I just touched the tabletop. Absolutely, there's bacteria on my mask, and I just put it up on my nose, and I'm going to breathe in the bacteria. Without a doubt, you're doing it all day, but it's fine. It's all just a little bit of bacteria, and it's general immunity, and your body's going to take care of it. So, general or non-specific immunity, like I wrote here, is not for going after large numbers of pathogen. When coronavirus infects you, it hits the ground running, and you've got millions in you by the end of the day. So that's a serious, that's a full-on invasion. It's not somebody breaking into your house. I don't know, all up in your house looking for bricks. I don't know why that franchise boys got into my head after all those years. I have no idea. That's not what it's about. It's a full-on invasion from another country. You can't handle that with your general immunity. Someone breaking into your house, you can handle that. You shouldn't have had bricks in your house. That's what happens. If you have bricks in your house, you shouldn't tell people that you have bricks in your house. That's why your house got broken into. Told people. That's your mistake. Got a bunch of pot plants? Don't put aluminum foil up on your windows. Just tell, you're letting the neighbors know. Throw that in an internal room. And they're all like, he's growing pot in his house. First, we're gonna divide this into the first and second line of defense. And that's what I'm gonna talk about today, and then that's where I'm gonna stop. I'm gonna talk about the first and second line of defense. I'm gonna end it there. Right? Specific immunity, we'll talk about on Wednesday. That's only one type of pathogen. So, and we'll get to that. This is general immunity. These are all, and you don't have to memorize everything, but they're all the first line of defense. This is before a pathogen busts through your epithelial tissue. If you get bacteria in your mouth on food and you swallow it, and it goes into your stomach, and the stomach acid kills it, that's first line of defense. We don't consider that getting into your body. Technically, it's in your body because you ate it and you swallowed it, right? But it's not, we don't consider it like in, because it didn't get past your, it's in your stomach, right? But if you just keep following it, it's going to go through more tubes, your intestine, it's going to make its way down to your rectum, and it's going to end up in the toilet. So it went in your mouth and went out your anus, and it's not, it didn't actually get into your bloodstream or anything. So that's first line of defense. It didn't get past the epithelial tissue. So epidermis, your skin, an excellent barrier. As long as you don't have any cuts on you, the epidermis is a great barrier. If you work in the medical field, you're probably going to get like exposed to blood at some point. And just when that happens, don't, like if it gets on your skin, don't freak out. Just take care of it and you're probably fine. It's really weird, like I used to work a lot of mental hospitals in the early 90s, and we were still freaking out about HIV. Like there weren't any like nice commercials where people were like having dinner on balconies and stuff like that. Back then, it's like that was a different vision we had in our head. Like you're gonna die. So when you get blood on you, like that was what was freaking out everybody that worked with people. Like, and so I would get exposed to blood. I would just freak out for weeks. Right? I took a few patients, and if this is like what you're not supposed to do, I took blood samples from them and I sent it off from like those private kits that you would get like at Walgreens and stuff. Like, that's like violating so many things, right? But that's how freaked out I was. Like, I was just like, my whole life was over. For what? It just got on my skin. Like, I'm fine. Like the HIV is not going to go into me from just getting on your skin. It's not a big deal, right? Now, like, even like last year, like I got somebody's blood on my wrist. I went and I took a CBG from it because I already had the glucometer out. I took the sugar and then I took it off my wrist. That was it. I worked the rest of the shift. I'm like, all right, cool. And I wasn't thinking like, oh, there's like a pill, I can go sit on the balcony with my best friend or whatever the commercial is. I wasn't thinking about that. I was just like, your skin's an awesome barrier. You don't have to like freak out about all these things. They had us really scared. There's a lot more virgins in the 80s and 90s. We were freaked out. Freaked out. Mosquitoes carrying this stuff around. Toilet seats. My point is, actually the real point is, you might get exposed one day, don't freak out. First of all, it's not HIV, that's not a Hep C or something, yes, but it's not gonna get through your skin. Your skin's awesome, Mucous membranes, not good at keeping things out, but they're constantly shedding their layers. So like the cells of your cheek, they're constantly shedding and sloughing off. So if a bacteria or something like sticks to it, it won't be able to stay for a very, very long time because eventually those cells are going to fall off and you're going to swallow it. So that's it. You're swallowing your own cells all the time. Your hair and cilia. The only place we have cilia in your body, and I'm doing this right now, I just cleared my throat, that's because of the cilia. The cilia in my throat pushed up dust and mucus and stuff up far enough so that I can cough it out. People with emphysema, for example, that's like one of their issues. The cilia don't work so well, and the mucus doesn't get lifted up far enough for you to cough it out, so it drops down into your lungs. But those are like first line of defense. Cilia help you cough things out. Hair traps things. Your tear ducts, lacrimal apparatus, your tear ducts contain something called lysozyme. First of all, tears keep things moving. Pathogens don't like when you keep things moving. They want to have a chance they want to be able to rest and start replicating and multiplying. They don't want to be kept moving around. That messes them up. So they don't like when your skin cells shed. They don't like when your tears, when you start making tears. They're trying to get into your eye and trying to get into your bloodstream. You're messing them up with your tears. Your tears contain lysozyme, which is like something that inhibits bacteria. Your saliva keeps things moving. They don't want to go down to your stomach. Your stomach sucks. It's acidic down there. They want to stay in your mouth and get through your cheeks and go into your bloodstream. You keep moving your saliva around. Urine's inhospitable. Diarrhea is a good way to get things moving. When you eat something you shouldn't have eaten, you can either throw it up, or if it made it past your stomach, you can try to get rid of it in the other way. So emesis is throwing up. Those are two ways to get rid of pathogens. And that's why you're having diarrhea. Your body senses that something shouldn't be there and like let's just get rid of everything. Like now. And your stomach juice, right? It's not your gastric juice is very acidic. Pathogens cannot handle a pH of 1.8. Pathogens like your pH. Pathogens like 7.4, maybe 8. Those are nice. That's a nice pH to be at. They like temperatures of 98.6, 99, whatever. They like that temperature. That's what they specialize in. So they don't want you to make it hotter in the body. They don't want you to make it more acidic in the body. They don't do well when you do that. But anyway, these are all first lines of defense. I'm not going to even go into the second line of defense. I'm going to use this time to go over any questions that might be on the quiz. So I'm going to go back to the other, well, I'll go back through this and then I'll go into the last chapter. So things that I want you to know. I might ask you about I don't know, I'm debating this. Let me do the upper chapter first. Let's see how I feel. Let me open the chapter on blood vessels. No. Okay. First thing I'd like you to know. Yeah. Yes. That's an easy question. What's the difference between conducting and distributing arteries? Or I might say elastic and muscular. I don't know. Right, that's it. It's all about the tunica media. Does the tunica media have a thick layer of elastic, or does it have a thick layer of muscle? If it's further from the heart, the tunica media has a thicker muscle. If it's closer to the heart, it has thicker elastic. That's it. So that's one possible question. So that's number one. Number two, types of capillaries. Describe the three types of capillaries. But don't just say continuous, fenestrated, sinusoid. Tell me a couple features of that. Okay, continuous just have the intracellular cleft. Fenestrated have larger intracellular clefts, and they have the fenestrations, like the pores. And then sinusoid have very large intracellular clefts and very large fenestrations. 4, I think I had this on a separate slide here.
4 or
3. 3, what are the pressures driving filtration? Explain or describe the pressures driving filtration and reabsorption. So it's these 3. Blood hydrostatic pressure. What is blood hydrostatic pressure? You don't have to put what I put there. You could just say that's from your heart beating. Then interstitial fluid osmotic pressure. You don't have to put the exact words that I'm putting. Just explain it. When you put more albumin, the water is attracted to wherever there's more albumin. So there's more albumin in the interstitial fluid, that's where the water wants to be. If there's more albumin in the blood, that's where the fluid wants to be. It wants to be wherever there's more albumin. So what are the pressures driving filtration and reabsorption? Yeah, I'd like to know what blood pressure is. Everybody should know that. You don't have to know mean arterial pressure. Some people are going to put it on the test because they just memorize the slide. That's it. There's all these symbols. D is a symbol, I is a symbol, A is a symbol. I'm just going to write all these symbols down. He asks a question, I'm just going to put stuff. MAP equals SPP plus 2 parenthesis DVP parenthesis line 3. I'm like, what is that? I don't know. She wrote it on the test. I don't know. So don't put it. What's the pressure on that artery when your heart's contracting? What's the pressure on that artery when the heart's relaxing? That's it. That's the answer. That's all blood pressure is.
What's the pressure?
Like when they put the cuff on you, that brachial artery, what's the pressure on the wall of that artery every time your heart contracts, every time your ventricle contracts, or your heart? Then the bottom number is every time your heart's relaxing, there's still pressure on that artery. So what's that pressure? That's your diastolic number. There's always pressure in your arteries. It's always pressurized. Sometimes it's more and sometimes it's less. It's never a constant pressure. Your veins are kind of like a constant pressure. But arteries, they fluctuate. pulsates. It goes up, down, it like oscillates. So what's causing the high number and what's causing the low number? That's what this is. You don't have to say it like this, you explain it in your own words, it's fine. I like it better anyway. Because when you understand what it is. Like this. You know, you might be tempted just to put 1/2 diameter equals 16 X resistance. And I'll be like, well, what does that mean? Just say the larger the diameter, the larger the pipe, the lower the pressure and the lower resistance. But we're talking about resistance here. So what's opposing blood flow?
So as the lumen gets smaller, the resistance goes up.
Yeah.
That's good.
The length of the blood vessels. More, I don't care about the 250 miles or whatever. It's not even exactly right. That's just me estimating. The more blood vessels, the more resistance. And then the thicker the blood, that's blood viscosity. So the more viscous the blood is, the more resistance. Water flows faster than honey. That's all that's saying. It's like, really when you think about it, it's just like common sense stuff. But if you try to like memorize words, then it starts to become, well, yeah, okay, when the tube's bigger, it's gonna be like easier to flow through it, right? And if I don't have so much to flow through, that's easier too. And if the fluid's thinner, that's gonna be easier.
So that's the fifth question, resistance?
Yeah.
Okay, so we're just describing size of the lumen, length of vessel.
Yeah, so don't just do like lumen vessel viscosity. Like, what do you mean by the lumen? Like size of lumen, what do you mean? Like, how do I know that you don't know that smaller or bigger makes a difference? Since I'm giving you the questions, people, I mean, I would want to just memorize. I just want to know, what do I need for this dude to give me my A? That's really all what this is all about, right? I get it. You're going from semester to semester.
Pretty much.
You're living test to test. You're not living long term. And that's what all students, that's what we do. We live from test to test. Just get me through this test. I just want to get through the next test. I just want to get to the semester.
How you know?
Because I had to live it too, like you know.
It says that it's possible.
And so you're not even necessarily, you're not thinking, well, I gotta remember this stuff and I have to actually learn how the body works.
I do great.
I'm always thinking, I just need to get through this, I'll learn it later.
Think like it. I like to learn.
Try to get it in your head.
Yeah. It becomes easy once you get it.
It all starts clicking, but I mean, I understand, but really it's like, since I'm telling you what it is, I mean, you just have to be able to explain it in your own head, and when you can explain it in your own head, you remember it, that's the thing.
Yeah.
Why do you gotta remember exact words that some teacher says who doesn't know what he's talking about? Just figure it out yourself and have it in your head and you can explain it. Yeah, I know how the heart works. If your friend came up and asked you, how does the heart work? Like, what would you say? That's all I'm really asking you on the test. Like when I ask you these questions, I just want to know. More important to remember that. Yeah, this one. How is, now I put a lot of bullet points here, but how does our body control for blood pressure? It's the same question as controlling for heart rate. Our body uses similar methods to speed or slow our heart rate as it does for blood pressure. The difference is Do you control the heart or do you control the blood vessel? Here, the end of the effectors are the blood vessels. You dilate, make the blood vessel you dilate it, and the pressure drops. Or you constrict. This is really what happens. You constrict it. When you constrict it, the pressure goes up. That's all the neurological part. But where are the receptors? They're in your carotid arteries, your aorta. They're sensing the pressure. When the pressure gets too high, it trips those sensors. The receptors. Receptors are sensors. You're tripping the sensors. But when the sensors get tripped, where's the central computer? Like, who knows that it got tripped? That's your medulla oblongata, your cardiovascular center, however you want to say it. That's the processing part. That's the central computer. And then, what's that medulla going to do about it? Well, it's got another wire running down to your blood vessels. It's going to make it's going to constrict your blood vessels. So the carotid artery is touched it. The carotid artery is seeing that the blood pressure is low. It sends up. I got it right. Do I have blood pressure? Yeah. So your carotid artery, blood pressure is low. It sends up. It's wired up. It sends a signal to your cardiovascular center. That's the central computer. Oh, hey, blood pressure is low. We got to do something about it. Send a signal back to the heart and make it beat faster, or send a signal. They don't have this here, but send a signal to your blood vessels. And let's constrict them. That's it. That's what it is. And you can make the argument that making your heart beat, you could say, well, we're going to send a signal to the heart also and make it beat faster, because that will raise blood pressure. I don't have it on this slide, wherever that slide is.
So the control of the blood pressure will be the number 6 question?
Yes. And then don't forget the chemicals. Don't forget what AMP does. And it's just really the question is, how does your body, what mechanisms does your body have to raise blood pressure? Conserve water. You do not want to lose any more water. So you don't want to pee more than you have to. So conserve water, that's one method. 2, constrict your blood vessels. That's the quickest, easiest method. Constrict your blood vessels. Vasopressin, for example. Constrict your blood vessels. And then, if you want to do a third one, you could try to raise your heart rate to try to compensate a little bit. When someone's dehydrated, their heart rate's up. That's one way you could figure out if they're getting hydrated again. Their heart rate slowly starts to come down. And they're peeing. So, renin-angiotensin aldosterone, that's all it's doing. It's constricting your blood vessels and it's making you pee less. Epinephrine, raising heart rate. ADH, same thing. Make you pee less, constrict your blood vessels. That's all making your blood pressure go up. And yeah, you're doing it the same way. So you're like, well, why is your brain constricting your blood vessels? And you have to make hormones to constrict your blood vessels, because the brain does it instantaneously. But it can't hold it for a long time. It's not good at doing it for a long time. It'll do it quick, but it can't do it for a half hour. The chemicals take a few seconds to work, but they work for longer. So that's why you always see both sides. Your body can go in there with the nervous system and just do it quick. There's a snake, you run. That's not epinephrine. But after you take 10 steps, now it's epinephrine, because you got to keep running. Your brain's not going to keep you going like that. Was that 6?
Mhm.
Yeah, this is all, you know what, we're just gonna do this chapter. That's all, I mean, it's a quiz, so I'm already at 7 questions here. What are the types of hypoperfusion, AKA shock? Describe the types of shock. If you want to talk about any that are not on here, that's fine, because the question's kind of general. I just put 4. If you write down MI, you should know what MI is. And like, what it, say, well, heart attack, that's cardiogenic. So if your heart's not working, you can't pump blood around your body. I just don't want you to memorize MI and like not even know what MI means, or PE. PE is just a block, it's a pulmonary embolism. It happens to people, their lungs get all locked up.
So that 7th question, what is hypoperfusion?
Yeah. And then I might ask, how can your body compensate? Well, that question that I'm asking you, how can your body compensate? I'm really saying, how does your body raise blood pressure? So just go back to this question. How can your body raise blood pressure? That's your answer. That's the compensation for shock. The shock is really low blood pressure. I think I have it on the next slide. See? This is the same thing. These 3 things, same thing. It's this slide. So how does your body compensate? Just think of any ways that your body might want to raise blood pressure. That's your answer. And what people do in the field to treat shock is the same thing your body does. We give epi. It's gonna make your heart beat faster. It's a vasoconstrictor. So that's 7 questions? I'll probably take 5 of those.
It's a total of 8 questions, it looks like.
8?
Mm-hmm.
Did you have how your body can control it as 1?
Yeah, how does the body compensate shock?
I'll have that as part of 7.
Okay.
I don't know if that makes you feel better, but 7 seems better than 8. I don't know.
Don't do that, because then we focus, and then you say, I'm only gonna pull 5 from it. 7 in my brain is.
Yeah, well, you learn all 7, and then 2 of them are probably not going to choose. But that's only 1 chapter. There's really no reason why you can't have an A on this. There really isn't.
And that's the quiz on Wednesday.
Yeah.
And if I want to come here and take it, I will come for what time?
If you want to come here, it'll be at 9 o'clock.
Okay.
And I think that's it. I covered all the questions. So we'll take the quiz. I'll start on Wednesday. I'll start lecturing at 9:45. 9:45. I'll start lecturing at 9:45. So, the first group come in at 9, the second group come in around 9:20, and I'll start lecturing at 9:45. I'll finish up the immune system. And probably go into respiration. We're already way behind. That's fine though. So that's it. If you guys have any questions?
Professor Claus, I actually have a question.
Yeah.
Do you know when you'll be able to finish grading exam 2?
Today.
Okay, and then also,
Days ago. If I don't have a grade for you within like a few hours, you could just please maybe email me or something. That should have been done last week.
okay. And then also, some of the modules, like some of the exams are locked. Like we've taken them, you've graded them, but then the first 2 are unlocked, but then the second 2 for me, I know are locked. So I can't go back and actually review them to see what I got wrong to, learn the right way.
I will unlock that. Well, actually, I'm good. Well, no, but do you want to see how you did on it? Yeah, I'm gonna unlock them. I'm gonna eventually post like probably sometime around next week, I'm gonna post a study guide for the final, and it's gonna have like all the questions on it.
Because I know you said the final is cumulative, right?
Yeah, but they're the exact questions, well, most of it will be the exact questions, where I cut and paste the questions, so you'll know the exact questions.
Okay.
And then,
Yeah, so
whatever chapter we're doing at the time, that won't be, you won't have those questions. But most of it you'll have. But yeah, anyway, let me unlock those tests. I'll go make sure those are on. Anybody else?
okay.
I'll see you guys Wednesday.
Okay.